This right here is a red rye IPA. It has a beautiful ruby color, incredible clarity. It's spicy, it's earthy, it's got tons of fresh, hoppy fruit character coming through, and it's definitely better than the original recipe on our channel, so we wanted to brew it again for you guys and show you exactly how we made it. Let's get started. To make this red IPA truly red, we need a ton of specialty malts, and those specialty malts are gonna help us contribute to those fruitcake flavors, candied prunes, kind of slight bitter orange in some cases, and just kind of general dark, chewier flavors that you don't have in your standard West Coast IPA. So in here, we are running with 62% of the grain bill being regular ale malt. 15% is going to be rye because it's a red rye, so we need a ton of it, but this is not your traditional rye. This stuff is pre-steamrolled, so it's flaked rye. I have not used this before, but the whole idea behind this is that it's meant to help with sparging purposes and let all the water flow through a little easier than what traditional rye will do. Apparently the steamrolling has something to do with the gelatinization to make it less gloopy, I guess is the best way I can describe that. It's kind of like lube when you use a lot of rye. The rest of the grain bill will be 12% redback malt, 6% aurora malt, 4% supernova, and lastly, 1%, this little itty bit in the middle here, midnight wheat. Not for any flavor purposes or anything like that, literally just for the hint of color, because we're shooting for around 34.5 EBC. On the color range for this beer, we needed just a little bit of a roasted malt to help us get there. Now, let's crush this stuff up and get to mashing in. I'm gonna get the rollers going first this time because we've had some issues the last few times. This thing's getting a little bit old.
When are we gonna get a new mill? Never.
Keg King, new mill. New mill. Right, now that all of this has been crushed up, we can now re-add back into all of this our rye and our rice hulls, the double R combo. So, the rye, because it's already been steamrolled, did not need to be actually crushed. That would just make things, I mean, you could, I guess, if you wanted to, just don't need to. I think it might make it all a bit too fine. It might make for a stuck sparge if you added them all in the mill. So, yeah, I don't know, I'm rambling. Just do it the way they tell you to do it. And the rice hulls. Again, I'm adding these in just to help with the whole lautering purposes, sparging purposes, helping the water actually flow through properly while we're mashing. I think with this particular style of rolled rye, the whole idea is you shouldn't need things like rice hulls anymore, but I just can't bring myself to trust it. I've worked with rye too many times and had far too many stuck sparges to trust that it will take care of itself anymore. And a stuck sparge is just, oh man. I mean, any of you that brew, you would have had one at some point. You could be standing there for hours and hours and it's painful. It's so painful. All right, I just like to give this a little bit of a mix up before we go mashing in, just to try and help all these rice hulls and all these now newly introduced grains get all mixed up throughout it. So it's kind of a consistent mash when I start actually, throwing this into the mash tun, assuming I don't spill all of it out of the bucket. Okay, I think that's good enough. Let's mash in. Okay, water for this one, water chemistry. We're gonna be running with 111 parts per million of calcium, 18 parts per million magnesium, 16 sodium, 100 chloride, 200 sulfate, and 57 bicarbonate. If you guys can avoid the bicarbonate, don't have it in this one. I just have it because I don't have RO water, so I'm stuck with it. But the important thing here is the 2-to-1 ratio of sulfite to chloride. Yes, this is technically a very malty beer. It's red, it's chewy, it's thick, but it's still an IPA. If I was just doing like a regular, like an Irish red ale or like a Flanders red, maybe I would be more leaning towards a malty water profile, but this is an IPA. So I want the hops to shine the same way that I want it to if I was doing a West Coast. So I want a 2-to-1 ratio of sulfite to chloride to make that happen. Now, let's start mashing in. There's a lot of grains in this one, so like a lot of these videos, I'm not going to be using the mash paddle because I am lazy and I like shortcuts. So we are going to be using the good old paint mixer. If you have not got one of these, get one. I'm sure all of you have a drill somewhere in your garage or your shed or whatever. This thing just You'll see, it just blitzes all the grains and makes it way easier to mash in for a very grain-heavy brew day. I also forgot to mention total grains for this one. So you could do the maths, but I'll just tell you, we are running with 12.46 total kilograms of grains here, which is 25.5 pounds if my math serves correctly. And the strike water we have here is 40 liters. I don't know what that is in gallons, 12 gallons or something. I don't know, Odin, that's your job later. And it is at 65 degrees Celsius. Odin, also your job later. I think that's 150 degrees Fahrenheit.
Thank you, Google calculators.
If you'd like to get more involved with the channel, see more behind the scenes, and get involved with directly helping us come up with new ideas and beers that we should brew for you guys, check out our Patreon in the link down below. Now, let's get back to the video.
Well, that is mashing done. So we're gonna leave this for 1 hour at 65 degrees Celsius, followed by a 15-minute mash out. So it takes about 5 minutes lag time for us, 10-minute total mash out. It's gonna raise the temperature of the mash up to 77 degrees Celsius to stop enzyme activity so that we're still left with body at the end of this. We'll see you at the end of the hour. We are now up to sparging. So first, let me say, it's red. It's definitely a red RYE IPA, which is awesome. The color is looking pretty bang on. But now for sparging purposes, we're gonna be running with 25 liters at 77/78 degrees Celsius, the same temperature as this mash out, to denature all the enzymes and wring out the sponge, so to speak. Squeeze out all the extra sugars that are trapped in this grain pipe right now to help us increase our efficiency and just get a little bit more bang for buck in terms of making our beer. So what we're doing is we're running the hot water slowly over the top of this grain bed so as not to disturb the grain bed too much. And that way it's just gonna gradually flow through all the grains and kind of keep pulling all those extra sugars down with it as the hot water flows over top of the grains. Get the idea? I think I explained that relatively well. All right, so we're gonna do this until we are out of all of our sparge water, and then we're gonna get into the boil. So I'll see you when we get stuck into that. We are now boiling, so it's time to add our bittering addition. Again, that was the 2 ounces / 57 grams each of Northern Brewer hops. So in they go. Start your clocks. We will be back in 50 minutes with 10 minutes left in the boil to add our next round of flavor and aroma hops. See you then. We are now at 10 minutes left in the boil, so time to add our first round of flavor and aroma hops, which was again 2 ounces each / 57 grams each of Racao, Citra, and Lupomax Mosaic. Alrighty, so I guess this is as good a time as any to talk about the IBUs we're shooting for and why we're using the hops that we are. We're aiming for 60 IBUs, so we want it to be decently bitter, not more bitter than the West Coast, but decently bitter to balance the amount of sweetness that's gonna be powering through from all those specialty malts. And the idea behind this is that the beer will drink first and foremost kind of spicy and earthy, like cooking spice, like allspice, that type of thing from the rye. It's gonna introduce a really unique character, and then that rye, that spicy rye, is going to be balanced by all those specialty malts, that fruitcake, that rich sultana kind of flavor coming through. And then at the end of all that, you're going to get this big burst of citrus, of slightly tropical fruits, of a little bit of fruitiness coming through, a little bit of melon, all from those different hops. And I'm hoping that the mosaic kind of rounds everything out with like a touch of blueberry. I think that'll work nicely with the rest of the specialties going into this. That's the goal. What happens? We don't know, but that's why we do this. Now, in 10 minutes, we'll do our Flameout hops and start cooling this thing down for yeast pitching temperature. We're back. Okay, I've now done Flameout. So I've turned off the heat source on this thing. We're now gonna start recirculating and cooling it down. At the same time, I'm gonna add my Flameout hops. So this is, once again, 2 ounces each / 57 grams each of Racao, Citra, and Lupomax Mosaic. I'm wondering where I put, you know what? I think I'm gonna have to go right in here because that hop spider is looking awfully full. Oh yeah, I love adding hops. It's just, oh, so good. The aroma coming off that, it's just awesome. Okay, we are going to cool this thing down. just the guy, the postie So the postie just drove past. So for the American, the post office guy, the postman Pat, but he rode past on his bike and just fully looking at his phone as he's riding with one hand. I'm just like, what is happening? That completely distracted me. Just like there's texting and driving, and then there's being on a motorbike. What are you gonna do if a car comes in front of you? You die. Oh my God. Death wish. Yeah. Okay, we're gonna cool this thing down to around 25 degrees Celsius. A little bit warmer than that, I don't mind. A little bit colder, I don't mind. Just somewhere in that ballpark is fine for this kind of yeast. And then we'll come back to you when we transfer to the fermenter. Time to transfer. So we are pumping out of the pump through the chiller, up over this long silicone tube into the fermenter. And I haven't opened up the valve, so nothing is coming through. Now I have owed and squatted for no reason, and there's the first shot. That's the money shot. Ooh. Nice. So, I'm gonna tell you right now, I'm a little disappointed with the color on this one because it's red. It will definitely be red, but it's not gonna be the deep, dark, ruby red that I was looking for. It's gonna be slightly lighter, almost like a dark orange to red type of thing. Annoying is what it is. Next time, I'm gonna go even harder on the darker crystal malts. Gravity. That's all. Gravity. So I took a reading off camera. We finished at 1.063 final gravity. So I got a feeling my initial gravity reading was slightly skewed. I probably wasn't calibrated properly. That was 1.06. Doesn't matter. Anyway, that's 1.063. It's probably going to finish around 1.013/14, giving us approximately a 7% beer. Still IPA territory, so I'm not really that fussed, to be honest. It's the Hunger Games.
The drinking game.
And may the odds be ever in your favor. Well, it's time to pitch yeast. Let me grab it. Because I am a real pitch bitch. This thing is finished transferring. It's all good to go. Last step here is the yeast. So I am doing a split batch with this yeast. I'm using the same yeast for 2 of these beers that are on the go at the moment. So I'm just gonna pour 3/4 of this into there, just in case you think that I forgot to finish pouring it. I did that intentionally.
You're gonna actually pour the whole thing.
Yeah, I probably will forget and I'll pour all of it. All right, ready? Okay, there we go. How much is left? Oh, I'll go a bit more. A little bit more. Yeah, a little bit more. Yeah, a little bit. Now we're done. We're done. All right, that is done. I'm gonna save this for the next beer. Time to close this thing up. Now, the next time that you guys see me will be when I'm dry hopping this thing, which I estimate to be about 7 to 8 days, give or take, depending on how quick this fermentation takes off. But that's a pretty healthy culture. So yeah, 7 days-ish, I'll come back to you and then we'll dry hop this bad boy. It has now been exactly a week, 7 days since we brewed this thing and it's been fermenting, and it's time for a dry hop charge. So I had to make some adjustments in comparison to what I said at the start of the video because I'm a fool and I forgot to order more Citra and I didn't realize I was running out of Citra. So it worked out fairly smoothly though, because we are now changing it to 2 ounces of Citra, and to make up for that deficit, it will be 3.5 ounces each of Racao and Lupomax Mosaic, which is 100 grams each of the Mosaic and the Racao, and 57 grams of Citra. So all kind of round numbers as far as the ounces go for the Americans out there. Now, let's get this dry hop charge in here. It's a nice pint glass worth, which is always fun. Oh man, I'm just gonna, Yep. Nice. I didn't screw up. Cool. All right, we're gonna get the lid on this. If you haven't seen this thing before in past videos, it is a 0 oxygen dry hopper. So by sealing up this chamber here, I can then whack on some CO2,
onto the gas inlet post. I can then use the PRV, the pressure release valve, to let out carbon dioxide, and by doing so we are flushing this chamber with CO2 to remove all the oxygen and make sure that we don't oxidize all our hard work with this nice yummy IPA. So I'm gonna do this a couple of times, make sure it's nice and cleaned out, then it'll be hops away. All right, this is probably enough now. Last one, fill it up with carbon dioxide, and now it's hops away. There we go. I got a bit stuck. All right, I am going to let this sit at a diacetyl rest temperature, which is going to be 22 degrees Celsius for us, which is about 72 Fahrenheit. So I'm going to do that for 2 days. Then I'm going to cold crash this thing and get it into kegs. And then next time you see me, I'll have a beer glass in my hand. So after all that, how did it turn out? Well, here she is. We've got the light under here to try and give you guys an idea of what it actually looks like. It is definitely very red. Actually, much better color than I expected it to be. It's got fantastic clarity. It's got heaps of just like aromatics coming right off the bat. Like there's lots of that fresh hoppy punch character just hitting you in the nose. But the flavor is awesome. So it's definitely that characteristic spice from the rye, which is unreal. It's exactly what we wanted, but it's in much better balance than when we made this original recipe. And I've got a feeling the flaked rye is just a little less intense than traditional rye. So there might be something to that. It's also got a vibrant hop flavor and aroma. So there's definitely like just generic tropical fruit characters coming out, a bit of citrus, bit of, maybe a bit of stone fruit in there, and a little bit of blueberry I feel like is popping up, and I think that's from the mosaic hops, which blends brilliantly with the character of the malt bill, because it's got that sticky date pudding, Christmas cakes, like kind of dark molassesy sweetness to it, not the cloying sweetness of like toffee, but something in that realm, like not overly sweet, but definitely on the sweet scale, if you know what I mean. Anyway, it's an awesome beer. I've been enjoying this one by the fire because it is a little bit cold in Australia right now, but this would also be a cracker beer in summer because it's only at 6.3%, which makes it more sessionable than some of the IPAs we've been making lately, but definitely not lacking for flavor. So cheers guys, and until next time, happy brewing.